Hey everybody, welcome back in to Live and Learn. Hope you all had a great last week. It's been a minute. I went through the weekend. Monday was Remembrance Day. Thank you to our veterans, our troops, for what you do every day, and that 90% of us do not have the courage to do. But we're back today. Over the next little bit, schedule will be a bit awry. No show tomorrow. Traveling for work and won't be back until later. So won't be available for a show. We will be doing a show on Monday. It will not be from my apartment here in Fredericton. It'll be from a hotel room in Halifax. But we'll be doing that, and that'll be on Monday night. So that's forthcoming. So that's the next schedule coming up. So no show tomorrow. We will have a show on Monday. Could be a little bit later than usual coming out, but there will be a show at some point Monday night. So that's forthcoming. But today, we have a lot to dive into because no show tomorrow. We're going to try to fit everything into the show today. We're going to talk a lot of NFL towards the back end of the program, get into the upcoming weekend, some big games, and talk about the lines and get into some injuries, some firings this week as we head into week 11 already, which is crazy. So we'll dive into that, including a great Thursday night football game tomorrow night in Philadelphia at the Link. So that's coming up later on in the show. But we have lots before that. And I want to start with the Hall of Fame. This past weekend, it was Hall of Fame weekend. Pavel Datsyuk, Shea Weber, David Poile, the most wins by an NHL GM in NHL history. You had Colin Campbell representing, he was a coach with the Rangers when they won in 94. He's worked for the league, making big changes. But to me, the biggest thing this past weekend was about Jeremy Roenick finally getting into the Hall of Fame. He gave a great speech about Doug Wilson kind of saving his life, signing him to the Sharks, getting to 500 goals, getting him sober. And I love JR. I love his candor. He should still be on television, if you ask me. He's not. Well, now maybe that Trump's president, he will be, because it'll end this kind of woke. Anyway. And to me, he shouldn't have taken 12 years. He was different. He wasn't all about the statistics. He was not all about flash and just overall points. It was about the way he played the game. It was about the way he approached it. He would fight. He would score. He would check whatever he had to do. He wrote a great book. If you haven't read it yet, I highly recommend it. Very interesting. Just about his upbringing and how he views the world. But I was super happy for JR. I think he's awesome. He's got a show now with Tim Peel, who used to be a referee in the NHL. So it was just good to see him back in the hockey world. Again, a great speech. Shea Weber, Pavel Datsyuk, very worthy guys. Shea Weber was a captain, multiple organizations. He dragged a bad Montreal Canadiens team to a Stanley Cup final, somehow playing nearly 30 minutes a night. Pavel Datsyuk, the Wizard, multiple-time Stanley Cup champion, seventh-round draft pick that went from seventh-round draft pick to one of the more dynamic. You look at Patrick Kane, Pavel Datsyuk was before Patrick Kane. They are both wizards with the puck. They're both smaller guys. And yet it never seemed that way. It never appeared that they were small, that they were out of their depths. They just made it work. And Pavel Datsyuk, just truly one of the most skilled, a guy you really don't know that much about because he is Russian. I don't think he was ever super comfortable speaking English. But he was phenomenal on the ice. He delivered a champion through those dynasties with the Detroit Red Wings, all the success that they had. So awesome to see this past weekend at the Hockey Hall of Fame, and happiest for good old JR. Lots happening in the NHL world. And let's get into last night's game between the Toronto Maple Leafs and the Ottawa Senators. First of all, I want to go back to this past weekend, and it was an interesting weekend for both these teams. Toronto beats Detroit, beats Montreal in two of the most mundane, two of the most awful games you will ever watch. It was stare at the TV and hope something happens, hope that it changes the channel, something. However, Toronto won, and they played a style that I think Craig Berube would be happy with the rest of the year. So I'm not taking away from them. I'm just saying as a viewer, it was a fucking painful experience because, quite frankly, and this is the truth, it's going to sound harsh, and Leafs fans get upset when you criticize them, but they're not an entertaining team to watch. They just aren't. Like, we're going to talk about a team later that's the best team in the league, and they're also the best team to watch. It's not Toronto, by the way, if you're people wondering. Not Edmonton either. But they're just, it's a boring style, it's slow, but they're a good team. They're a good team. Stanley Cup worthy? No, they're a good team. But they won their games, they did everything they wanted. And then Ottawa played great against Boston. Game went to overtime. They should have went to overtime. They're by far the better team. Allmark was pedestrian in the game, and Boston ends up getting a point. They shouldn't have. Ottawa is by far the better team. Brady Tkachuk gets the winner. Now to last night. Last night, it looked like a team that two very different teams. A Toronto team that was like, yeah, we've played a lot of hockey lately. We're a little tired. We don't have Matthews. We can't win every game without him. We can't make that an argument. So let's kind of mail it in tonight. And if we give our C-plus effort, maybe we'll beat Ottawa, because we always beat Ottawa, because they're little brother, Battle of Ontario, and hasn't really been a Battle of Ontario in a long, long time. But Ottawa kicked their ass, quite frankly. Ottawa wanted the puck more. Ottawa got the puck. They attacked. They were good on the forecheck, really good along the boards, and the only good Leaf player last night was Anthony Stolarz. Really, other than that, it was a no-show for a lot of their top guys. So I want to start off by crediting Ottawa, because Ottawa's now 500. They haven't had a good start. They'd want a better 16 games in to be 8-8 is not a victory for them. They needed a better start. They're starting to play better. You're starting to see progress. Allmark can play 2 games in a row without coming up with some phantom injury to sit him out like every other weak-ass goaltender in the NHL, not named Connor Hellebuck or Vasilevsky or Stolarz. But he's playing. He got another shutout last night. He played well-ish against the Bruins, and they're stable there. But I look at Ottawa. Drake Batherson's had a really good start to the season, quietly. So Ottawa's it's a Canadian market, but it's not a big market. Drake Batherson, who is a good player, might be taking a step because he's had productive seasons. Don't get me wrong, he's a good player. He's 26. Good 98 born. Nothing wrong with that. 15 games, 15 point per game after 15 for Drake Batherson. That's a victory. He had 66 and 82 last year. Hasn't missed a game in the last 2+ seasons, and he's around a 60-point performer. 62 and 66 has never gotten to 30 goals. He can pass the puck quite well. But Batherson, playing, to me, the best hockey of his career, looking so comfortable in his role in this team. Brady Tkachuk is a monster when he wants to be, like his brother. They're great players because you never know what you're going to get. And it's interesting because they can have games where they are a complete misfire, where they are nowhere to be seen, but they find a way to have success. Last night, he was great, as he was against Boston. I thought the whole team, their bottom of their lineup, with guys like Michael Amadio, who they brought over from the Vegas Golden Knights, who's a Stanley Cup champion. That third line with Amadio and with even Zach McEwen on the fourth line, productive evening. Good minutes. Good on the forecheck. But going through the bottom of that line, I like Nick Cousins' game. 4 penalty minutes. Okay. Good. 2 shots on goal. Couple hits. Brady Tkachuk threw 7 hits last night. 4 penalty minutes, 4 shots on goal. No points, but he was great. Stützle was there. But I just saw a team that was more connected. I just saw a team that played together. Played like they believed that they could win that game, like they wanted it more than the Toronto. That was evident. Jake Sanderson, by the way. Jake Sanderson is a stud. Jake Sanderson is already one of the better defensemen in the NHL. He's getting better by the night. Sanderson, Brock Faber. Not guys that'll probably have huge point totals. They'll be good. But I look at both of them and I go, these two guys are the future of the league. Because they defend incredibly well. They skate really well. They're smart. They can get the puck out of their zone. And Sanderson's got 9 points in 15 games, which to most people that view it would go, oh, he's not that good of a player. Oh, it's not enough points. He's only got 1 goal. I could give a rat's ass. The points will come. How many defensemen now can actually defend? Can actually get the puck out of their zone effectively? Few and far between. He's awesome. He was great last night. Stützle has an edge. He's playing like he's a North American now. No longer in Europe. I like his game. It's got an edge. He's got a black eye right now. Looks tougher. Playing a little tougher. Still got that great shot. Good release. All that fun stuff. But it's good. I like seeing that from him. So the Sens to me were impressive. They were good on Saturday. To Toronto. Toronto last night, it's one game. It's one game. But watching them for, I think, to be their 18th game tonight when they head to Washington, with or without Austin Matthews, I don't think they're a Stanley Cup threat, really. Despite the fact that the league is so bottled up, I don't buy that this team could go 4 rounds. Despite the fact that Stollarz has been great. And the prodigal son, Joe Wall, is fantastic, of course. When he wants to be. But all that aside, they don't have secondary scoring. Credit to John Tavares, who I have no faith in, but he's had a pretty good start to the season. And I'm going to repeat this. Credit to him. A lot of those goals are coming in the power play. A lot of those goals, he doesn't have to move to put the puck in the net. But he's scoring. And again, credit to him. But if John Tavares is your number 2 center, well, if John Tavares is your number 2 center, we know where the Leafs are going to go. They'll be golfing in mid-May, which is typically where they go. 5-on-5, he's a net negative. He's not a good 5-on-5 player. He's too slow. Alex Ovechkin's a lot slower than he used to be, but he's not a centerman. And he can park himself and still have an impact, still be one of the best goal scorers in the world, Alex Ovechkin. John Tavares ain't. He is a center, and he's slow, and he's behind every puck, and he's losing a lot of board battles. If you're not watching the games, happens quite frequently. So I wake up and I go, where's this team going? What are they? Nick Robertson has been a ghost the entire season. He's ghost because it's hard to find him because he's like 5'4", but also he's a ghost because if he's not scoring goals, he's completely irrelevant to your team. Let's just be honest. It pains me to say because he's one of my mother's favorite players and she loves the Leafs, but he does nothing to help that team. Now Calle Jarnkrok has a setback in his injury. Connor Dewar, not exactly an offensive player, back into the lineup. Big debut last night. Did he even play? Couldn't tell you. So he's going to keep playing because of his offensive upside. But he doesn't bring any offensive upside. Max Domi, poor guy, it seems to me like his confidence is so shot. He's afraid to shoot the puck. And they're going to win a lot of games. And this is about looking at the big picture to me. Ottawa, they have to play well, and you kind of have to talk about their right now because they've never gotten to being a playoff team where they deserve the respect of the Toronto Maple Leafs, where they're going to get there. Ottawa Senators fans should have little to no faith that they will. You know why? Because they've never proven it. Oh, huge expectations on the Ottawa Senators again. And yet, back of everybody's mind has to be, oh, they'll find a way to blow it. Because they always do. Toronto, they're making the playoffs. Despite the fact that I think they have a lot of holes on this team. And one of their bigger strengths on this team, which is crazy to think about, is goaltending. Whoever's in the net, they could still win their division. Because Florida has had a pretty easy schedule so far. And it's going to come back on them that they made it, they won last year. And they lost so many important pieces. A lot of them are on Toronto. And Brandon Montour's in Seattle. He'd be nice to have. OEL, last night's game notwithstanding, would be nice to have on your team. God, he was trash last night. But he'd be nice to have more often than not. But you don't anymore. And that'll come back to haunt Florida. I don't think Florida, they could still win their division because they're a good team. And Sam Reinhart's been awesome to start the year. Worth every penny of that contract extension. But they'll get tired. They'll get complacent. They get tougher games like they played New Jersey last night. They lost in a really fun game. Physical affair down in Florida, down in Sunrise. So the Leafs could still win this division. Boston, no trust in them. They're just a team they're a team that has a Yeah, they're trying to find it. Detroit sucks. We saw that they played that Detroit-Toronto game. They should refund tickets to that because I know that was in Toronto. That lower bowl, probably, I don't know, 300-400, maybe more than that, Canadian to go watch that game. And that game was not worth the pot that somebody pissed in to go to that game. That was so bad, that game. God. And I watched most of it. Ugh. Jake Paul, Mike Tyson will be better this weekend than what that game was. We'll talk about that in a bit. But they're going to be fine. I look at the Oilers, I look at the Leafs, I look at these teams that you really go, could they win? Like Florida, their defense, not great. They don't defend that well. They don't defend off the rush all that well. Bobrovsky's letting in a lot of goals that should be saves. Toronto, last night got beaten along the boards easily. Not a lot of pushback. Not a lot of fight. It wouldn't have mattered if Matthews played last night. They were losing that game. Leafs are in the nation's capital playing Washington tonight. Back to back before they get Edmonton on Saturday. Where if I had to guess, Austin Matthews will return for that game and play against McDavid. That's what I think will happen. He's obviously not playing tonight off a back-to-back where he didn't play last night. Would make no sense if he could play tonight on the road. So he'll miss another game, Austin Matthews. Washington's had a really good start. They crushed St. Louis on Saturday night, 8-1. Ovi had 3 points. Connor McMichael, former World Junior player, has 10 goals on the season, quietly. Ovi also has 10 goals. 39 years young, still going strong. 14 games this season. 18 points for the grade 8. +9 for everybody over 50 on here. He can still do it. They leave him open in that office, and he makes them pay every time. On pace to break Wayne Gretzky's record this season. And not to mention, could Washington be a playoff team again? Could Washington compete with the Carolinas of the world, who have had a great start to the season at 11-3 and have won 6 in a row? Could they compete with the Rangers, who lost a close game last night, who Washington's already beat this year? I want to see the Leafs push back tonight. They were awful last night and had nothing. Also, a Leafs observation. Is Ryan Reeves not allowed to fight anymore? Do they not let him fight? Is that a rule in the NHL that he can't drop the gloves? Because if he can't fight, what's he doing on the ice? Why is he playing 14 games this year with 1 point and 8 penalty minutes? Just because he's on that fourth line and they have nobody else? Okay. Sure. But I just see a bunch of guys that don't do much, and it's not just a one-off, it's a nightly thing, that just get to stay in the lineup. Reeves, Robertson. Missing Pacioretty's going to suck because he was playing well. Bobby McMahon, not as good as Pacioretty in my mind because he's not as consistent. Doesn't throw as many hits. not as just physical up-tempo of a player, which preferred option. But I want to see how they respond tonight. Sounds like Yanni Hakanpää will make his Toronto Maple Leafs debut. Looks like Connor Timmins will come out of the lineup. Would have been Simone Benoit for me, but I think that'll kind of bounce around a little bit. I think you'll see both guys get looks. Hakanpää I also don't think will play every night because his health has been documented and it's pretty horrible the last couple of years. So expecting him to be available all the time is probably a pretty stupid conclusion for the Maple Leafs. So they're going to have lots of defense, a rotation. I think Timmins overall has had a really good season for him, the way he's played. But you're not taking out Riley. You're not taking out Ekman-Larsson. You're not taking out McCabe. You're not taking out Tanev. But Simone Benoit and Hakanpää are kind of the same guy. Chip it up off the glass, except Benoit likes to do more. Likes to do more than he should based on his skill set, which is limited. But we'll see with Hakanpää and how he plays in his Leaf debut tonight. How about the Winnipeg Jets? 16 games in, 15-1, best start in NHL history. Incredible. I didn't see it coming, I'll tell you that. Beginning of the year, you could go, you know what? Pretty easy schedule, you know. Beat the Oilers, good win. Beat the Blackhawks in overtime. Beat Minnesota in overtime. Okay, beat San Jose, sucked. Beat Pittsburgh, stinks. Beat St. Louis, stink. Beat Kraken, not very good. Calgary, solid. Lose to Toronto, only loss on the year. Way to go, Leafs fans. At Detroit, not a tough game. Crush Columbus. But then we get to beat Tampa, okay. Beat Utah, shut them out, okay. Shut out the Avs. Well, that's pretty good. Crush the Stars. Okay. And then go on the road to play the Rangers and beat them 6-3. I like that. Last night, that was great. Just a great game. Two of the best teams in the league, Winnipeg, and you have the reigning President's Trophy winners in the New York Rangers. What makes Winnipeg the most entertaining and the best team in the NHL? They're both. If you haven't watched a Winnipeg Jets game yet, I highly recommend you do so. Saturday, it was interesting because I was visiting my uncle, and he threw on the game, and he said, holy crap, they're a fast team. And he saw it in 5 minutes. Just how good this team was. They are incredibly fast in a league that's actually quite slow. The NHL, it's slow this season. Not that the product's bad, mostly, but it's slow. The league is kind of stuck in the mud. Winnipeg is not. Winnipeg is getting really good performances from a lot of different guys, including their goaltender. We also look up and go, wow, Nick Ehlers' contract here has been phenomenal. Power play, 5-on-5, doesn't matter. He's everywhere. 20 points in 16 games for Nick Ehlers. Mark Scheifele, 21 points in 16 games. Mark Scheifele. And then there's Kyle Connor, 22 points in 16 games. Looking like he's going to have a career year in points and in goals. We'll get 40 plus, get up to close to 50 this year. Kyle Connor, as he had a pair last night at MSG. But not just that, Josh Morrissey is over a point per game as a defenseman. He's playing awesome. Awesome. You look at him move the puck. Makar and Quinn Hughes are the two best defensemen in the league just when it comes to points, which is what wins you Norris's. And to me, Makar is the best defense, and it's really not. Quinn is good, but Makar, there's levels to this, and Cale Makar is the best. Josh Morrissey is getting up there. He's been doing this for a couple years now. Winnipeg's always consistent. To me, Josh Morrissey is going to be part of Team Canada and the Four Nations Cup. Used to be a debate. Oh, if you're going to go with Morgan Riley or are you going to go with Josh Morrissey? It's not a debate anymore. You're going with Josh Morrissey, and Morgan Riley can stay the bleep home. Let's be honest. He's a number one defenseman on the best team in the league. So that tells you he's pretty good. That tells you he does a lot for this team. Neil Pionk, solid player. 17 points in 16 games for Neil Pionk. Really good on the power play. We also look up Gabe Valardi. Love him. 14 points in 16 games. Had a beautiful goal last night on a give and go with Ehlers. Skill you rarely see. Gabe Valardi, to me, is going to be a 25 goal scorer this year. That's where he's going to be at for his career. But a really good winger that has a really good sense for where the puck's going to be, putting himself in the right situation and capitalizing on opportunities. Cole Perfetti, different type player from Valardi. A little smaller, a little more skill-based, a little more finesse. But same, good finish. Really good passer. And I think it was a new lease on life for him to get a new coach in Scott Arniel. Clearly, him and Rick Bowness didn't really see eye to eye. They didn't see his value. They gave him a bridge deal. He's had a really good start to the season. 13 points in 16 games. Nemestikov, 12 in 16. Adam Lowry, 11. Nito Niederreiter, 12 and 16. Going through this lineup, guys are producing. Finding a way to be productive. Dylan Sandberg, not a points guy, but he's a I'll bash your head in guy. Perfect third pairing defenseman. Will fight, will check, defends really well, throws hits. Jack of all trades. But to me, watching them against the Rangers last night, what really impressed me was just their overall approach. Speed, movement, constantly making stuff happen. If a Rangers defenseman got the puck, it wasn't, okay, let's give them forever to make a decision. Somebody is on you. And that's why you saw last night, like Keandre Miller, Trouba, they had tough nights. Keandre Miller got spun around by Gabriel Valardi, and that was an embarrassing moment for him. And I actually like Keandre Miller. He's had his ups and downs in his NHL career so far. But Winnipeg makes people look stupid. They made Dallas look like the Pittsburgh Penguins, like a bunch of AARP members. And yeah, Dallas has some old guys, but that team is not old top to bottom. They got a lot of youth. Winnipeg is just coming at you constantly. Speed, up and down the ice, transitions, but they do it safe. They're not going to win every game. They're going to have their ups and downs. Like this week, they got Florida, Tampa, and then they have Florida at home. So some really tough tests over the next little bit for the Winnipeg Jets. But they built themselves up here to where they have a cushion. Where you look up and go, okay, well, we're first in the league in points. We're first in the Central, which isn't an easy division, by the way. But if you look at them right now, they have a 7-point lead over the Minnesota Wild. in the Central Division. They have wow, this is staggering. Dallas has 2 games in hand, but they have a 12-point lead over the Dallas Stars. They have a 14-point lead over the Colorado Avalanche, who they lost to in the first round last year. 18-point lead over the Nashville Predators. That's staggering stuff, and it's only November the 13th. And they're this good. They're just an impressive club. Out of the gate, they found their game, and they've continued. They haven't lost it. They kept that being consistent, part of their identity. Where you have a team like Edmonton, to juxtapose it, who are still trying to find it. And Edmonton at their apex has more upside than Winnipeg. Because Connor McDavid, Leon Draisaitl, when he wants to show up and play, Evan Bouchard, you just go through that roster and you go, okay, I like him better, I like him better, I like him. Now, if Hellebuck can show up in the playoffs, that's absolutely an X factor. And I can change your season around, that you could go on a deep run that Winnipeg has never gone on. Similar to the Maple Leafs in this conversation, similar to, really, look at Tampa the last couple of years since their cup runs. They haven't had that. But Edmonton beats the Islanders last night. It was a McDavid game. He's like, we're not losing to the Islanders, who aren't very good. He had 4 points. He's up to 999 career points. There's not much he didn't do last night for that team. Draisaitl got his 12th on the game winner, now tied for the league lead. But they let the Islanders come back. Islanders scored twice in the third period to tie it at 3. But ultimately, McDavid, Draisaitl, Bouchard, who had some points in the power play, they showed up. They played well. McDavid with the injury, slow start, bad play for the Oilers. For them, it's about finding consistent goaltending and just playing consistently over the next. Just like Evan Bouchard, don't be terrible in your own zone, because he has been this year. Forwards, be a little more accountable in your own zone. No drive-bys, no fly-throughs. Be available for the exit pass out of the zone. That's something Edmonton still doesn't do, and it drives me nuts because it's such an easy thing. Not hard to be attention to detail and care about your defensemen. They don't. Not enough anyway, and it hurts them. Because Edmonton's defense, not as good as it was last year. Also, some of their top guys aren't playing that well. So be available to help them whenever you can. Be present for them. But they got the win. The Islanders brought in Patrick Waugh last year. And they're just... If you look at them, 16 points in 16 games. It's 500. Technically, they do have more points than Tampa, Buffalo, Philly. But you look at the East. Montreal stinks. Montreal, they're terrible. They beat Buffalo on Monday in that barn burner, 7-5. But Montreal is going nowhere. They're not coached well. They don't defend. They don't do much well. The Montreal Canadiens, and they will be at the bottom. Columbus, same. Compete hard most nights. I'll give them that, but not a good team. Detroit, I don't know what their identity is. I don't know what their plan is. Some of their draft picks haven't been that good. They have 3 goalies that combine to make a 2 in the NHL. That's a second string. Pittsburgh's AARP. They're old. They're so old. They got crushed on Monday against the Dallas Stars. 6-0 after the first period. And they get to play Detroit tonight, which I'm sure all of you are, after this podcast is over, you're going to flip over and watch Pittsburgh-Detroit because that'll be thrilling, that game tonight. Just a tightly checked affair. Just two teams that have absolute hope that they can get to a wild card spot. But Pittsburgh has Mike Sullivan, who's still owed a lot of money, who I think is a good coach. Multiple-time Stanley Cup champion. No denying he's a good coach. I think if he was fired, he'd get a new job before the start of next season. However, he's been there a while. They have an old team. They have goalies that aren't giving them stability. Tristan Jarry makes $5 million, and he's played more games in the AHL than the NHL this year. And I love Sid. Evgeny Malkin. You look at their numbers, they're fine. But Erik Karlsson hasn't been good since he got to Pittsburgh. He's still in Pittsburgh. He's still not good. Chris Letang looks long in the tooth. They don't get secondary scoring. Achari, 5 points in 17 games. Beauvillier, 5 points. Brian Rust, who makes a ton of money, not giving them much. Cody Glass, nothing. Kevin Hayes, nothing. Who could have seen that coming? Michael Bunting, 2 goals in 16 games and a total of 3 points. He's asked to do more. He can't. Ryan Graves doesn't have a point in 17 games. And he's not really defending that well either. And that's what he was brought in to do for a big ticket. Hasn't been worth it so far. So I don't see this team, them going anywhere. Flyers. Well, they healthy scratched my boy Matvei Michkov twice. They then played him on Monday. He had 2 goals, including the winner in the gimmick, which, if you're new to the program, is a shootout. I call it the gimmick because I hate it. And it's a gimmick event. Why they're not playing him beats me. Does he have some bad defensive moments? Sure. But, I mean, your team, without him, doesn't score many goals. Your team without him, not overly creative outside of Travis Konechny, who's awesome. But Konechny leads the team in points. Michkov second. And he's played 2 less games than everybody else. More points than Owen Tippett, more Couturier, Farabee, Lawton, Brink, Frost, who was a healthy scratch the other night. So Torts is coaching the team hard. Are they going anywhere? No. Buffalo, I'd love to say yes, but I don't know. Tampa, I think they'll be a playoff team. So the Islanders, they could be a playoff team because the East sucks. The East is full of just teams that aren't very good. Kind of like the NBA Eastern Conference, quite frankly. But Tampa has been that consistent so far. They haven't been that good. But they'll probably make the playoffs because that's just the way it works. They always find a way to get in. But if you look at it currently, Florida will be a playoff team. Yes. Toronto, playoff team. Yes. Boston, probably, because I don't trust the rest of the conference. New Jersey, yes. Carolina, yes. Washington, More than likely, yeah, because they have more talent than these teams below them. And Logan Thompson's a pretty good goalie. Rangers, yes. Ottawa, TBD. But the way they've been playing, that should absolutely be a yes. But this is a huge stretch for the Senators. We're getting back onto them, but tomorrow, host the Flyers. Okay, easier game, but you got to win that game. Saturday at Carolina, one of the hottest teams in the league, hottest team in the league, not named Winnipeg. Tuesday, host the Oilers. Thursday, host the Golden Knights. Following Saturday, host the Canucks, and then host the Flames. It's a tough homestand. A lot of playoff teams in there. A lot of good teams in there. So we'll see how they shape up against the league's best. Vancouver beats Calgary last night. Good win for Vancouver. They're now 8-3-3 on the season. Kevin Lankinen has been really good for the Canucks. 9-11 save percentage, 2.46 goals against, 8-1-3 on the season. Thank God for him, because Shelov's hasn't been good, but he's been their number one guy. And he's accountable. He made 28 saves last night, playing a divisional opponent in Calgary. Pettersson gets on the board. Good to see that for him. Just to see a couple points on the board, to see some confidence, now up to 9 points in 14 games. Still has a lot that he could produce, a lot more that he could do. But signs of life from him. Sounds like Thatcher Demko could be back soon enough for Vancouver. I still think they're a good team. They got the Islanders tomorrow night at home. Blackhawks, Predators. Before they head out east to play Ottawa, to play Boston, to play Pittsburgh, Buffalo. But the Canucks, to me, consistently playing well. They are a really good Western Conference team. And in that division, the Pacific, that is top-heavy, I like the Oilers, despite the fact that they struggle out of the gate. Vegas, to me, threatening team, good team. I like Vancouver at their best when they're healthy. Dakota Joshua, Thatcher Demko, all those guys. Better than Los Angeles. Just personally, I think they're better than them. Are they better than the Flames to be 8-6-3 after 17 games? First wild card position, credit to them. Credit to them to continue to play hard every night. To be 3 points up on a team like Colorado after 17 games is impressive. Colorado, I think, is starting to find their game a little bit. They're hosting Los Angeles tonight. Nathan McKinnon leads the league in scoring. Cale Makar not too far behind. But they're only 500. They're another slow start team in Colorado. So we'll see how that goes. But tonight you got Leafs, Caps, Red Wings, Pittsburgh, we just talked about. Carolina in Utah tonight as they continue their West Coast swing. Vegas in Anaheim to play the Ducks. And Los Angeles in Colorado. So some decent games this evening. Before we move to football, just the NBA in-season tournament, which has now been rebranded as the NBA Cup. Don't know how that's better, but in-season, it was popular last year. Not by me, but by some, I suppose. The IST. The Lakers ended up winning it. I think they beat, who'd they beat in the final? Pacers, maybe? Might have beat the Pacers in the IST final. In-season tournament to me is, I get it why the NBA is doing it. However, you're having a lot of guys sit out games. Embiid did play last night. Credit to him. Finally played a game. Sixers did lose, however. But, well, they lose pretty much every night. But they lost again to the Knicks. To the Knicks, who haven't been good so far this year. But hey, he played and Paul George played, so that's a sign of life, I suppose, for the 76ers. But the in-season turn, I don't buy into it. You have to know which teams are in which bracket, which I'm not looking up. I don't really care. I like watching the NBA because, well, occasionally I do watch a lot of basketball, but the three-pointer, again, that 45 threes a game is not that entertaining. The fact that players don't play games, I don't find that very entertaining. If you look right now, and I suppose you can't blame these players because they're actually injured, but there's a lot of guys who are injured a lot. Zion, out. Anthony Davis, out. Joel, always out. You have Chet Holmgren, who missed a full season. So these are just some of the guys who aren't available right now for their respective teams. Now, Oklahoma City Thunder will still be a good team because Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is one of the best players in basketball. One of them, right there. And you've had some good, like Golden State being this good to start the season. I didn't see this coming. Another big win in Dallas, at home against Dallas last night, and Klay Thompson's return. That was the story. It wasn't about in-season tournament and them getting points. Who gives a shit? But that's a good story. The Milwaukee Bucks and the Philadelphia 76ers being an absolute tire fire over the course of the first month. That's an interesting story. 76ers are now 2-8 on the season. And they have a back-to-back tonight playing the Cleveland Cavaliers, who are undefeated. 76ers at home are 11.5-point dogs. Because no Embiid, no Paul George, because of knee injury maintenance is what they're calling it. Adam Silver should find teams who, just because they don't play players, because they're not actually injured. Oh, and by the way, Embiid missed the first 9 games of the year. The Philadelphia 76ers have 15 back-to-backs this year, which means he'll be missing at least 15 more games. So that's 24. Not to mention he'll get injured somewhere in there. Does he even play half the games? Does he get to 41? Does he get to 42 games this year? Over 40, Joel Embiid? I'm not so sure. Does Paul George play 50 plus? Probably not. Or do they have to force feed him and he comes up with an injury because their team sucks? And Nick Nurse is looking at a team going, I have no Maxey, Embiid doesn't play, Paul George doesn't play. Where are we going? Home early is where you're going. So I understand what the NBA is doing. They're trying something different with the in-season tournament. To me, it doesn't work because it requires too much upkeep. I can track standings, I can track playoff formats, but it's the playoffs. You know what the payoff is going to be. Oh my God, can Kansas City get the 1 seed? And you can follow that, and it makes sense. Who would they play after they got the bye? You can go that and track it. Nobody wants to do that for an in-season tournament where the trophy you get is basically a jock strap. Way to go. You won the in-season tournament, and guess what? You could miss the playoffs at the end of the year because the in-season tournament does not reflect anything of how good you are as a team. Because the Lakers won it and they were bounced in 5 games of the first round. So it wasn't a reflection of good teams. It was just the Lakers said, you know what? For this 3-week stretch, let's show up and play games. We have good health for this set of games. Let's all just choose to go out there and play. Yippee! Who cares? There are some good stories in the NBA. Interesting storylines. Milwaukee, 76ers, Golden State. Celtics losing to the Atlanta Hawks without Trae Young. Sure. Timberwolves. Stink. Zach Edey. Playing pretty well in Memphis. Rookie of the year, maybe. Phoenix Suns, 9-2. 2-1 without Kevin Durant. Another guy hurt. KD, I forgot about him. KD, another guy hurt. Of course he is. He's always hurt. That's what hurts the NBA. You might really be injured, but are you really injured? Because it's the only sport where you can question if a guy's actually injured because of how many times players just sit out games. For no other reason than they're fucking lazy. Barkley didn't sit out. MJ didn't sit out. Patrick Ewing didn't sit out games. Today's NBA, they do. And it makes it a lesser product. And the crazy thing is, you think about business. Product's not as good. The best people aren't available. Say you're in a business and you're working for Apple and you don't have any phones. You're selling the rest of your product, the watches, crap, but you're selling the rest of your other products, which make up your sales, but you don't have your best thing. And yet you're making more money than you ever have. And the players are making more money than they ever have. Crazy amounts. In the next decade, there will be $100 million a year salaried NBA player. $100 million. And yet they occasionally, some guys just never play. You'll make generational times 2 wealth, and yet you're a no-show. And all you do is shoot threes, and you don't put the ball into the goddamn paint anymore or the low block. And yet they get rewarded. It's the complete opposite of what everything I know about business. Watching pretty much every member of my family own a business, work ethic, being diligent, being up on employees, having really good products, being different from your competition. No, okay, we won't have guys show up. We're only going to shoot a 3. We're going to have load management, and you know what? We're going to pay you more money. What? In what world does that make sense in the NBA? Because the broadcasting companies want it. It's like Walter White's blue meth. They want it so bad that they're going to pay for dog beep product. And I still like the NBA. But the product right now sucks. Okay. Let's get to football. Lots happened since we last spoke when it comes to the NFL. We're going to talk CFL at the end of the show as well. But NFL, just a couple headlines off the top. Today, the Indianapolis Colts announced that they're going back to Anthony Richardson as their starting quarterback for the remainder of the season. This was after they benched him for Joe Flacco 2 weeks ago. Since then, Flacco threw 2 touchdowns, 5 interceptions. The Colts lost both games, and they're now 4-6 on the season, hoping to get into a wild card spot. But this is also a chance for Anthony Richardson to show that he is a franchise quarterback, that he's somebody that they can rely on moving forward, and audition for him to be the Colts quarterback moving forward. He was drafted 4th overall by the Colts last year. He's only played in 10 games so far in his pro career. He only played in 13 games in college. So very little football, but a massive arm. Could have the biggest arm in football. Really athletic. Has a lot there that you like. This was the correct decision. However, I understood why Shane Steichen benched Anthony Richardson 2 weeks ago after he checked out of a play for admitting he was too tired. I had never seen that before. You had multiple ex-players on TV say, I'd never seen that. That should never happen. O-line, D-line, busting their ass, playing every play. So I understood it. But you could have benched him for one game and then went back. Because Joe Flacco played twice and he was awful in both games. And they lost twice. Now, I don't think the Colts are perfect. They have a lot of flaws. Shane Steichen is a second-year head coach. Is he a great head coach? Remains to be seen. He was a game away from winning the AFC South last year with Gardner Minshew at quarterback. So I do think he can coach football and coach offenses and coach quarterbacks. He coached Jalen Hurts to nearly winning a Super Bowl a couple years ago in Philadelphia as the offensive coordinator. But you look at the Colts, upcoming this weekend, at Jets, host the Lions, at the Patriots, at the Broncos, host Tennessee, at the Giants, host the Jags to wrap up their season. Picking winner is so tough. At Jets, they can win that game. Absolutely can win that game. Looking at that line, courtesy of FanDuel Sportsbook, and we'll start looking through this weekend's games with this. We'll go through the headlines, and as we go through them, we'll talk about those respective games. But Colts at the Jets. Jets just got crushed by the Cardinals, if you missed it this past weekend. But Colts are getting 3.5 at the New York Jets. The Jets were a favorite last weekend in Arizona. How that ever came to be, I don't know. Still a strange line, losing 31-6. Arizona's a good team. The Jets are not. Colts can win this game on the road. Because Anthony Richardson, I like their skill position group. They have talent. Jonathan Taylor is a good running back. Alec Pierce, deep threat. It's just if Richardson can be consistent, I do think he'll be motivated to go out and play hard. We'll do the hike video for week 11 on Sunday. But this is a line that's interesting to me. The Jets being favored at any point the rest of the year against anybody is alarming, and it makes you want to take the opposition and the points, whether at home or whether on the road. They lost to the Patriots as a favorite. They lost to the Cardinals as a favorite. 3.5 here with a reinvigorated Anthony Richardson with something to prove is interesting. But at Jets, host the Lions. That's probably a loss. Let's say they beat the Jets. So let's play this exercise. Lose to the Lions, 5-7. At the Patriots, okay, win, 6-7. Host at Denver. This is their big game. At Denver, a team that is very much in that mix, a team you have to beat in order to get into the playoffs. Denver in December, tough place to play. Likely snow on the field. Richardson, Indy plays in a dome. Probably a loss. Could be a cover, depending on the game. Then host the Titans, win. At Giants, win. Host Jags, win. So you could see Indy being 9-8 at the end of the year, which could be enough to get into the playoffs as a wildcard team. Because I think they're going to be in that mix with the Denver Broncos, who we just talked about. I think they'll be in the mix with a team like the Broncos, with the Steelers or the Ravens, whoever doesn't win the AFC North. And also, I think the Chargers are making the playoffs. To me, they're a lock. I love the Chargers. Jim Harbaugh, my boy. Jim Harbaugh, football, Jesus is all you really need. Chargers, you look at Falcons, at Chiefs, tough. Host the Bucks, Broncos, Patriots, Raiders. I love their December. They could sweep that. They might lose the next two, but finish 11-5. That's a playoff team. Money in the bank every day of the week. Playoff team. Won't win the division, but be a wild card team. Chargers are getting in. Bengals will be in that mix. Colts will be in that mix, and Broncos. One of those three teams is making the playoffs in the AFC. I don't think the Dolphins are going to be good enough. I don't think the Jets are going to be good enough. But I look at the Colts, this game against the Jets this weekend, huge. The game against the Broncos, huge. Both road games. Other than that, I don't think they're beating Detroit because I don't think anybody's beating Detroit. Well, maybe a team in their own division, but not the Colts, even at home. But if you can get one of those two games at the Jets or at Denver, you are in the mix. For them to get to 10 wins would be massive. And they might be part of the pick segment coming up, but I don't mind their chances. Them getting 3.5, very interesting. Also announced today, Trevor Lawrence has been ruled out on Sunday for the second straight week with a shoulder injury. The Jags have a bye after this week, so they're giving him more time to rest up. Does this really matter? No. The Jaguars are terrible. And they have Detroit. And they are the biggest underdog of the weekend. They are a 13.5-point dog on the road in Detroit, which is a huge number. But Mac Jones put up 7 points last week in a loss to the Vikings, 12-7, awful game. I love huge spreads. I love betting underdogs. First of all, that's not going to be one of my picks, but I'm not betting on the Jaguars. Despite the fact that Houston covered on Sunday night with Jared Goff throwing 5 interceptions, but I'm not betting the Jags, even with Mac Jones at quarterback and their injuries and how just poorly coached they are. After this bye week, I think Doug Peterson likely gets fired. They'll have a week off. Think about it. They're going to be 2-10, 2-9. Just a dreadful start. Some people, not me, thought they could win the AFC South. Now you're a 13.5-point dog against the Lions. Trevor Lawrence hasn't played. Doesn't matter. They'd be a 12.5. They'd be 12.5, 11-point dog with Trevor Lawrence in at quarterback. He's been awful this year, and the team sucks. Flatly. On Tuesday, the Chicago Bears fired offensive coordinator Shane Waldron after just 9 games. This year, 2 offensive coordinators have been fired in the NFL. Shane Waldron, who was the current offensive coordinator of the Bears, and Luke Getsy, who was the offensive coordinator of the Bears last year and was the offensive coordinator for the Raiders. So 2 former Bears coaches get fired this year as offensive coordinator. Caleb Williams has been sacked 38 times, most in the NFL. He holds the ball for nearly 4.5 seconds per dropback, longest in the NFL. 32nd in the NFL on play action, which there's 32 starting quarterbacks, so that's the worst. And it's just been pretty dreadful the last little while for the Bears. They are at home playing the Packers. Packers are coming off a bye. And the Bears are only getting 5.5. I thought this line would be bigger. I get it's a division game. It's outside at Soldier Field, but Green Bay plays in the frozen tundra. Jordan Love hasn't played well, I suppose, this year. He has his ups and downs. But the Bears, I feel for Caleb Williams. I don't think he's had great coaching. They've left him out, kind of out to dry a little bit. But he's got good receivers. He needs to trust and throw the ball. Rome Odunze, DJ Moore, Keenan Allen, Cole Kmet. I love Cole Kmet, the big tight end. DeAndre Swift, interesting running back. He just needs to trust and throw the ball down the field. Take some chances. They need to pass protect better, and they need the ball out of his hands, kind of Tua-esque. Get the ball out of his hands and let the playmakers do stuff. But the Bears are in a state of disarray. Matt Eberflus will be fired at the end of the year. This is coming, no doubt about it. Should have been done last year. I don't know why it wasn't done last year. I think the Bears are going to be aggressive to try to hire Ben Johnson, the offensive coordinator of the Lions, to come in and fix their number 1 overall pick, Caleb Williams. But the Bears, the fact that it's only a 5.5-point line, I'd be all over the Packers in this game, despite the fact that it's a division game. It's not going to be one of my picks for Sunday, but I would take the Packers, certainly. Team that's not playing this week, but Daniel Jones. They went to Munich, beautiful Germany, and the poor people in Munich had to watch the Giants and the Panthers play a football game. Carolina won in overtime. Good to see Bryce Young smile and have some success. But New York loses. They're 2-8 on the season. And it looks like Danny Dimes' time in New York is coming to an end. The reason for that is they have a bye week, but after that, if he was to get injured in the last 7 weeks of the season, there's a $22 million insurance payment that'll be handed to. It's like an injury insurance clause on Daniel Jones' contract that the Giants would have to pay him as salary next year. If he's sat out and he doesn't play, he cannot get injured and they can cut him, and he has no guaranteed money left on his contract. So this is business. Danny Dimes is playing horrible. You can avoid having him there longer, not pay him that money. You will go play Drew Lock or Tommy DeVito. I would make him inactive. He'd be my 3rd quarterback the rest of the year. The Giants are in the quarterback business. They want that number 1 overall pick to draft Shador, to draft Cam Ward, whoever it might be, because they do not have their quarterback of the future in Daniel Jones. They gave him $40 million a year 2 years ago. It was stupid then. It's stupid now. A massive mistake that they're still paying for. I love Malik Neighbors. He's awesome. I think they have an interesting Dexter Lawrence is a good player, but that roster is not very talented. They need to boost it up with talent, but they also need a quarterback, and they will be in the quarterback business come April and the draft. Also this weekend, let's see. Ravens Steelers, fun game in Pittsburgh. Ravens are a 3-point favorite on the road. It's interesting, that line to me. Steelers were an underdog in Washington. Not only did they cover the spread, they won the game outright. Russell Wilson threw 3 touchdown passes in that victory. Baltimore's secondary has been a sieve all season long. Steelers are 7-2. This will be their first division game all year, which is crazy. They haven't played a division game and it's week 11. This is the Steelers' schedule the rest of the way. It's quite something. Home to the Ravens, at the Browns, at the Bengals, host the Browns, at Philly, at Baltimore, host Kansas City, host Cincinnati. That's not fun. That's a tough schedule. Great thing for them, they have 7 wins in the bank. And that's what they can be happy about. We already have 7 wins. And you might go, we have Cleveland twice. There's 9. Can you beat the Ravens, one of the two? Can you beat the Bengals, one of the two? Can you upset the Chiefs on Christmas Day? Interesting line this weekend. We'll talk about it. It could be part of the pick segment. Just saying. Seahawks in San Francisco. San Francisco just beat Tampa. McCaffrey was back. Still working out the kinks. Seattle coming off a bye. Always fun in the division in San Francisco. San Francisco's been winning a lot of these games. Atlanta heading to Denver. This is a quietly really interesting game. Atlanta just lost to New Orleans. Oof. Denver losing to Kansas City after their walk-off field goal was blocked, which dropped them to 5-5. Denver is a 2.5-point favorite at home. Bo Nix has been playing a lot better. Kirk Cousins was awful on Sunday. Interesting line, interesting game. Game of the weekend, Kansas City in Buffalo to play the Bills. Kansas City still undefeated, winning close game after close game. And you can look at them this weekend and get them as an underdog. You can get Kansas City plus 2.5 points, which always is intriguing. The fact that they're an underdog in a game rarely happens, other than the playoffs last year where I made a lot of money betting on them. Buffalo, awesome start, 8-2. Buffalo knows going into this game, if they lose, pretty much wipes out their chances of being the number 1 seed in the AFC. They'd be 3 games back, Kansas City with the tiebreaker. I don't think that's going to happen. If Buffalo can win on Sunday at home, they are still in that mix. Because they're a very good team. And Buffalo down the stretch obviously play the Chiefs at home, bye week, host the 49ers, at the Rams, at Detroit, host the Patriots, host the Jets, at the Patriots. So their last 3 games, that's a cupcake last 3 games. Lions in there, 49ers is tough. Kansas City also has Bills at Panthers, host Raiders, host the Chargers, which is always tough for them. Chargers play them tough. At Cleveland, host Houston, then 4 days later at Pittsburgh, and close up at the Broncos. So some difficult games. Bills have to win that game to have a chance of being the number 1 seed. You also got Bengals, Chargers, Sunday Night Football. Huge game for playoff implications. Bengals must win this game if they are going to remain in the play. If they lose this game, they're 4-7. They're not going anywhere. It's an elimination game for the Bengals. If they lose, they're done. Period. End of story. They'd be 4-7, not having their bye week yet, and they still have to play the Steelers twice. And I don't think they're beating the Steelers twice this year. That's a game in Los Angeles. That's a fun game. Vikings, Titans, Browns, Saints, Rams, Patriots. That might be part of the pick segment. Just saying. How about tonight's game? Commanders, Eagles. In Philadelphia at Lincoln Financial. Sorry, tomorrow. I thought it was Thursday. It's Wednesday. Sorry. Tomorrow night, Thursday Night Football at the Lincoln Financial Field. The Commanders getting 3.5 after losing by a point to Pittsburgh on Sunday. So This is after the Eagles crushed the Cowboys, who still suck, who play on Monday night this week. I like the Commanders. I love Jaden Daniels. I like Dan Quinn. But the Commanders are 0-3 this year against teams over 500. They haven't beat a team over 500 yet. They crush teams that aren't. They lose against good teams. We've seen that. They've been in close games, but they don't win those close games. The Eagles are still smoke and mirrors. I still love the roster. Jalen Hurts played a really good month of football. He had a number of rushing touchdowns this past weekend. A.J. Brown, when he's active, is just a game changer for that offense. Commanders will hang tough, but I like the Eagles -3.5 at home. To me, the Eagles, yes, the Commanders are there, but the Eagles are the best team in the NFC East. To me, the Eagles, when they're at their best, they're the second best team in the NFC because to me, they're more consistent. They're better than San Francisco. They're not better than Detroit because Detroit's the best team in football. But Philly, with Jalen playing the way he has, Saquon Barkley's a difference maker, A.J. Brown on the field, he's basically a walking 5 catches, 115 yards, and a touchdown. That's basically been his conversion in Philadelphia. And him and Jalen have an awesome connection. Dallas Goedert's healthy. Offensive line, pretty healthy going into this game. Again, Washington will keep it close. Terry McLaurin, Jaden Daniels have been really, really good together. But I like Philly to win. I think Philly's going to win the NFC East. I think Washington will be a wild card team. But short week for Jaden Daniels. Rookie quarterback on the road on a Thursday night going into Philly. I just think it's too much for him. I like the Eagles -3.5 tomorrow night. Also this weekend, Mike Tyson, Jake Paul. Yes, it's still happening at Jerry World. Hopefully they close the curtains so the sun's not getting in on the event so we can see it. I am not thrilled about this. Am I going to watch it? Yes. But I'm watching it more for Amanda Serrano and Katie Taylor is 2 of the best female boxers ever. And they're going to be boxing in the co-main event. That's a great fight. If you haven't watched boxing in a while, just tune in for that. You're going to be like, wow, that's a good... And then you're going to tune into the main event and go, that was shit. But Jake Paul is a -2.5 point, -205 favorite going into this. Mike Tyson +168. So pretty close odds. Now, Mike Tyson to be knocked down in any of rounds 1, 2, 3, or 4 +175. Mike Tyson to win a fight in round 5 to start +550. Don't like that at all. Jake Paul to be knocked down in round 1 +850. If Mike Tyson's going to win this fight, he's going to win it in the first round. Because that's how he won his fights when he was 19 in his prime. So if you believe Mike Tyson's going to win, he's not going to win via decision. He's going to win because he knocks Jake Paul's head off. So I would bet Jake Paul to be knocked down in round 1 +850. And I would also bet on Mike Tyson to win the fight +168. If you believe Mike Tyson's going to win. I don't, personally. I hope he does. Jake Paul, yes, he's a YouTuber, and he hasn't boxed legitimate. One time he did box a legitimate boxer. He got beat by Tommy Fury. But he can box. Yes, he is on more juice than Tropicana, to quote the legend Chael Sonnen. But he's on roids. He's in there. He's feeling it. He's got pimples up the wazoo. He'll go in there and beat a 58-year-old man. I wish it wouldn't happen, but it's going to happen, unfortunately. So I'm going to watch this. I'm not fascinated by it. I'm curious to see what the crowd's like, what it's like in Jerry World. But I do like Jake Paul to win the fight, and I wish it wasn't that way, but it is. Ugh. Because Mike's a legend. He is. Also this weekend, and I'm just bringing this up, we haven't talked much UFC since the kind of pivot, but Jon Jones, when you have the best, you could argue the best athlete in a certain sport, getting into the cage for only the second time in 4.5 years, you bring it up. John Bones Jones, the greatest light heavyweight in UFC history, you could argue the best fighter in UFC history, gets back in the octagon this weekend against Stipe Miocic, the greatest heavyweight in UFC history. John versus Stipe. If John can beat him, he could walk out. Now, he's teased fights with Alex Pereira, which would be awesome. I'd sign up for that. Poatan against Bones. He's a minus 700 favorite, which is aggressive for me. Because yes, Stipe hasn't fought since 2022. John's fought once since 2020. I wouldn't mind sprinkling some cash on Stipe. And John's fought once at heavyweight against Cyril Gane, who didn't really show up. I think it's going to be a closer fight than what's being discussed. I don't think John's going to finish this in the first round. I think we're going to get a scrap. Now, the winner fighting Tom Aspinall would love that. The winner fighting Alex Pereira would love that. But Jon Jones, potentially his last fight, something to watch. The rest of the card, solid. Bo Nickel, one of the most promising up-and-comers in the UFC right now. He's a minus 1,400 favorite in his fight. Charles Oliveira, Michael Chandler, second fight. First one was really good. Prelims. How about Jim Miller, 48th UFC fight this upcoming weekend? Legend. You can get him plus money. I don't mind that. Chris Weidman, former middleweight champion of the world, knocked out Anderson Silva. He's an underdog against Eric Sanders. Marcus McGee, like him. Solid card this upcoming weekend at the Mecca in New York. And then there's the Grey Cup. CFL this weekend, Blue Bombers versus Argonauts. Currently, the Bombers are a 10.5-point favorite. No Chad Kelly, who broke his tibia and his fibula this past weekend, so Nick Arbuckle will step in for the Argonauts in the Grey Cup. Montreal was an 8.5-point underdog last year, and they won the game. They won the Grey Cup outright. This is Winnipeg's 5th trip to the Grey Cup. They are 2-2 so far. The way Colorado's play with Kenny Lawler and found guys, Brady Oliveira running the football, I think Winnipeg's going to win the game, but the Grey Cup's always weird. Janarian Grant's a great kick returner for the Argonauts. I think he'll have an impact on the game. I think the Blue Bombers are going to win another Grey Cup. Zach Claros will go down as one of the great CFL quarterbacks of all time. He's had a great career already. He'll win another Grey Cup. I think the Argonauts are going to cover. I would take the Argonauts plus 10.5. Special teams, Arbuckle's a solid quarterback. They have good receiving options. Tavares Daniels, former Notre Dame product, really good CFL career. Polk has stepped up. They can run the football with Kadeem Carey. So the Blue Bombers will get back in the win column in the Grey Cup this year in BC. However, the Argonauts will cover the 10.5-point spread. And the Grey Cup's usually great. It's usually a better game than the Super Bowl, quite frankly. The Jonas Brothers are doing the halftime show, if you like that type of thing. I don't, but I listen to 95% of halftime shows on mute. So I guess that's why I listen to 99% of sporting events on mute. So that kind of tells you something about me. Loaded show today. But that just means we're going to have a lot to talk about on Monday. As I said, no show tomorrow. Work on the road for work tomorrow. Won't be back in time, but we'll be doing a show Monday, potentially a little later release date because I will be traveling. but there will be a show on Monday recapping the weekend. Let me look at it. NHL, fully slate, including Oilers Maple Leafs on Saturday night, which is always fun. Jake Paul on Friday, UFC 309 on Saturday. NFL full slate, Commanders Eagles tomorrow evening. College football, some really interesting games this weekend. So it should be a lot of fun. We'll recap it all on Monday. Until next time, thank you all for the support as always. Until next time, I'm your host, Noah Warren, and this is the Live and Learn podcast.